Chapters 11 and 12. Chapter 11 first. The New World Trade Center. In the days following 9/11, New York City and the rest of the United States came together to grieve and show support for the country. In New York City, the stars and stripes were flown everywhere. Cars and motorcycles, bikes and boats, small towns and huge cities were flying the flag. People wore small flag pins. Flag decals were seen on construction workers' hard hats, car bumpers, trucks of every kind. Right after the attack, the saddest sight in New York City was posters and flyers with pictures of missing persons. They were put up in the hope that somehow the people were still alive. Memorials sprang up around New York City. Flowers, candles, balloons, cards, and letters to the victims of 9/11 were placed in public places and in nearby towns where the victims had lived. New York City firehouses put up pictures of the men from those stations who had died on 9/11. The message was clear. The attack caused almost unbearable loss, but it could not defeat the spirit of Americans. The terrorists were not able to crush the country or the city that had been so badly hurt. Now, instead of posters that said, "I love New York," there were ones saying, "I love New York more than ever." Almost at once, there was a talk of a new World Trade Center to be built with a memorial honoring all the victims. But how should it be handled? Should the Twin Towers be rebuilt exactly as they were? Some thought so. Others, often those who had lost loved ones on September 11th, said that the area where their towers fell was sacred ground. It was the final resting place of more than 1,100 victims whose remains were never found. Nothing should be built there. In the end, the decision was to set aside land for a museum and a memorial. The rest of the area would become new office towers. In July 2002, there was a worldwide contest to design a master plan for the entire 16-acre site. From over 400 entries, a panel of architects and city planners picked 7 finalists. In February 2003, architect Daniel Libeskind was chosen to carry out his plan. He called it Memory Foundations. It featured a tower with a spire that was 1,776 feet tall that became known as Freedom Tower. It would be the tallest building in the United States. Its height referred to the year 1776, when the American colonies declared their independence from England and became a free country. Today, the finished building is called One World Trade Center. In April 2003, another contest was announced. This was for the design of the memorial and the 9/11 museum. The memorial area was to take up 8 acres, including the ones where the Twin Towers had once stood. Anyone over the age of 18 could enter the contest. 5,201 proposals came in. Judging all the entries took 9 months. The winner was Reflecting Absence by architect Michael Arid. One of the judges was a famous architect named Maya Lin. She said Arid made something positive out of the void. Void is another word for a deep hole. The names of all the victims were inscribed on the rims of 2 giant fountains. Names were grouped in a meaningful way. Family members appear together, so do friends and coworkers. The waist-high walls of the fountain outline the footprint of the Twin Towers. Water cascades down all 4 sides of each and collects in a reflecting pool at the bottom. As it grows dark, the names are lit so that even on the blackest night, they can all be seen. Arid's original proposal for the plaza was too bare. The judges urged him to work with a landscape architect. They decided to surround the memorial waterfalls with a grove of more than 400 oak trees. This made the plaza greener and more welcoming. Because the 2 fountains are at ground level, some of the space for museum exhibits was placed under the footprints of the 2 towers. The finished memorial area is quiet and restful. Large crowds of visitors walk through the lines of oak trees to the fountains. People speak softly. The waterfalls splash quietly. The wind rustles the leaves of the trees. It is truly a place of remembering. the survivor tree. Within the grove of oaks, one tree stands out. It is a pear tree and a true survivor of 9/11. The tree was one of many in the outdoor plaza of the Twin Towers. All the others were burned or crushed when the buildings fell. Hardly more than a stump was left of one remaining pear tree, but it was still alive. The tree was sent to a nursery in the Bronx, New York, where it grew new branches. In December 2010, the pear tree, now called the survivor tree, was placed among the oaks. It is 30 feet high. Each spring, it is the first tree to bloom. Its beautiful white flowers are a sign of life at a place where there was so much death and destruction. Chapter 12, the museum. Figuring out the design of the 9/11 Memorial Museum was also complicated. Because the two fountains are so big, much of the exhibit space in the museum is 70 feet underground. Going to most museums is fun. It is the chance to see beautiful art or learn about science. The 9/11 Memorial Museum is different. It focuses on a terrible day in history, and much of what is shown is difficult to look at and learn about. When visitors arrive at the museum, they go down one level and walk through a darkened hall that echoes with taped voices of people saying where they were and what they heard or saw on the morning of September 11th, 2001. The witnesses' words are also lit up on nearby panels. At the bottom of the ramp, visitors can look down onto the main exhibit floor. A section of the massive slurry wall, which still holds back the waters of the Hudson River, is nearby. Then visitors take an escalator farther down. Next to the escalator are the survivors' stairs. On 9/11, countless people went down them to safety. Many remembered a policeman telling them, "Run down these stairs and then run for your lives." Many objects in the museum are massive and weigh thousands of pounds. There is a giant motor that powered one of the elevators, a battered EMS truck, giant twisted I-beams, and huge pieces of structural steel. A fire truck that belonged to Ladder 3 Company is also there. It had its cab sheared off by falling pieces of the towers. What remains is battered. Part of the ladder is stretched and twisted. 11 members from this firehouse in New York City's East Village went to the Twin Towers on 9/11, and all of them died there. Years earlier, these important objects had been moved from Ground Zero. They were kept in a hangar at John F. Kennedy International Airport. In 2008, the largest and heaviest things were brought back to where the Twin Towers had stood. Each piece was carefully lowered by crane into its place in the future museum. Then the roof of the museum was closed and covered by the Memorial Plaza. In front of the slurry wall is the last column. It weighs 58 tons and was the last piece of the Twin Towers to be taken from Ground Zero. It is covered with messages workers wrote on it during the cleanup efforts. There are also many small items on display: eyeglasses, house keys, company ID cards, wallets, and shoes. There are fighter fighters' helmets. Some look like they could still be used, but one is broken and split apart. In all, the museum has 10,000 objects, large and small, that tell the story of the attacks on the Twin Towers and on Washington, D.C. These are all bits and pieces of the larger story of September 11th, 2001. A visit to the museum offers a glimpse into the lives of the ordinary people who worked at the Twin Towers and Pentagon, the first responders, and the passengers and crews on the doomed planes. It reminds all of us to think of the day and the victims so that their memory will never be erased.